You know that moment when you're in a relationship and suddenly, out of nowhere, you're faced with a test. Maybe it's a seemingly innocent question like, "Do I look good in this?" But you can feel the weight behind it. Or perhaps it's a silent treatment that leaves you scrambling to figure out what you did wrong. These moments can feel like walking through a minefield where one wrong step could blow everything up. And if you've ever found yourself overthinking, second-guessing, or just plain frustrated by these little challenges, you're not alone. Relationships are full of these subtle tests, some intentional, some not. But here's the good news. There's an ancient philosophy that can help you navigate them with grace and confidence. That philosophy is Stoicism. It's not about suppressing emotions or acting cold. Instead, it's about mastering your reactions, understanding what's within your control, and staying unshaken even when things feel unpredictable. The Stoics thinkers like Marcus Aurelius, Epictetus, and Seneca knew a thing or two about facing challenges without losing their cool, and their wisdom isn't just for ancient warriors or philosophers. It's for anyone who's ever felt thrown off by a partner's unpredictable behavior. Imagine being able to respond to those loaded questions, emotional silences, or sudden mood shifts with calm clarity instead of anxiety or frustration. That's the power Stoicism offers. In this video, we're diving into 25 ways Stoicism helps you pass her tests, not by playing games or manipulating the situation, but by cultivating inner strength, emotional resilience, and unshakable self-assurance. You'll learn how to handle passive-aggressive comments without taking the bait, how to stay grounded when emotions run high, and why sometimes the best response is no response at all. This isn't about changing her, it's about changing how you show up in those moments. By the end, you'll have a toolkit of Stoic principles that turn relationship tests from sources of stress into opportunities for growth. So if you're ready to stop feeling like you're always one misstep away from disaster, let's get started. Think about the last time your partner seemed upset and you immediately started worrying. What did I say? What did I do? Is she mad at me? That spiral of anxiety happens because we focus on things we can't actually control. Her emotions, her reactions, even her silent treatments. Stoicism flips this script with a simple but game-changing principle called the dichotomy of control. It's the idea that some things are within your power and some aren't, and your peace of mind depends on knowing the difference. Here's how it works. You can't control whether she's in a good mood today. You can't control if she takes your words the wrong way, but you can control how you respond. You choose whether to react defensively or with patience. You decide if her test throws you off balance or if you meet it with calm clarity. Marcus Aurelius put it best when he said, "You have power over your mind, not outside events." Realize this and you will find strength. That shift in focus, from her unpredictability to your own composure, is what stops these tests from rattling you. Picture this, she asks, "Do I look okay in this?" And there's that tense pause, like the whole conversation hinges on your answer. The old you might panic, scrambling for the right response to avoid setting her off. But the Stoic you recognize that her insecurity isn't yours to fix. Your role isn't to manage her emotions, it's to answer honestly and kindly, then let go of how she takes it. If she's genuinely testing you, reacting with confidence, not anxiety, disarms the game. If she's just having a moment, your steadiness becomes an anchor. This isn't about indifference, it's about freedom. When you stop tying your worth to her approval or moods, you stop handing her the remote control to your peace. Epictetus, the former slave-turned-philosopher, nailed it. It's not what happens to you, but how you react to it that matters. So next time a test lands in your lap, pause. Ask yourself, is this mine to carry? If it's not, let it pass like clouds in the sky, observed but not clung to. That's how you turn these moments from power struggles into proof of your unshakable groundedness. Here's a word that might sound cold at first glance: apatheia. The Stoics called it one of their greatest virtues, but it's nothing like the modern idea of apathy, that numb, disconnected state where nothing matters. Real apatheia is something far more powerful, the ability to experience emotions without being enslaved by them. It's the difference between feeling frustration when she throws a curveball and being consumed by it. Think of it as emotional buoyancy. You notice the waves, but you don't let them drag you under. Let's break this down with a scenario. Say she cancels plans last minute with a vague text and your mind instantly races. Is she losing interest? Is this a test to see if I'll get needy? The unguarded reaction might be to double text, seek reassurance, or even suppress annoyance to keep the peace. But apatheia shifts the focus inward. Instead of asking, what does this mean about her, you ask, what does my reaction say about me? Seneca, who wrote letters on everything from anger to grief, put it bluntly, we suffer more often in imagination than in reality. That anxiety spiral, the stories we tell ourselves about her intentions, is where most of the pain lies. Emotional detachment isn't about ignoring her behavior, it's about refusing to let it hijack your peace. Picture a chess player. She makes a move and you could panic, or you could calmly assess the board and choose your response. That pause, the space between her action and your reaction, is where Stoic strength thrives. This isn't suppression, it's clarity. When you master apatheia, you stop interpreting her moods as emergencies. A sharp comment isn't a demand to fix her feelings, it's just data. Maybe she's tired, maybe she's testing you, maybe it's unrelated, but your job isn't to decode it. Your job is to stay steady. Marcus Aurelius journaled this reminder. Today I shall be meeting with interference, ingratitude, insolence, disloyalty, ill will, and selfishness, all due to the offender's ignorance of what is good or evil. Translation: people lash out from their own unresolved pain, not yours. Here's the practice. Next time her behavior triggers you, label the emotion fear, irritation, insecurity. Then ask, will surrendering to this improve anything? If not, return to your center. Ancient Stoics trained for this like athletes. They anticipated insults, rehearsed losses, even slept on the floor to practice discomfort. You don't need extremes, but you can build resilience. Start small. When she's distant, resist the urge to fill the silence. When she critiques, respond, don't react. Over time, you'll notice something freeing. Her tests lose their power to unsettle you. Because here's the secret she might not even realize. The less you need her approval, the more she'll respect your composure. Emotional detachment isn't a wall, it's the foundation for something better. A relationship where you're not walking on eggshells, but walking tall. What if every test she throws your way isn't a hurdle but a hidden gym for your character? That's the Stoic art of reframing, taking what feels like an attack or a power play and seeing it as the very thing that sharpens you. Marcus Aurelius wrote in his private journal, "The impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way." In other words, her mood swings, her silent treatments, even her loaded questions aren't just annoyances, they're your training ground. Let's say she hits you with the classic, "You're always so distant lately." The knee-jerk reaction might be defensiveness. "I'm not distant, you're just clingy." Or worse, guilt-tripping yourself into overcompensating. But the Stoic approach, you pause, you ask, what's this moment teaching me? Maybe it's a chance to practice patience when emotions run hot. Maybe it's revealing a blind spot in how you communicate. Or maybe it's just testing your ability to stay calm under fire. Every test is an invitation to level up. The Stoics called this Amor, Fati, a love of fate. It's not about enjoying discomfort, but about embracing it as the necessary friction that polishes you. Think of a sword being tempered in fire. The heat isn't there to destroy it, but to make it unbreakable. When she gives you the cold shoulder, that's your fire. When she criticizes, that's the hammer. Your job isn't to avoid these moments, but to let them forge you into someone unshakable. Here's the practical shift. Instead of dreading her tests, start anticipating them. Not with anxiety, but with curiosity. What will this reveal about my growth? Epictetus, who endured slavery before becoming a philosopher, put it this way: difficulties show men what they are. Her unpredictability isn't a flaw in the relationship. It's the mirror showing you where you're still reactive. And every time you choose calm over chaos, you're not just passing her test, you're acing your own. This reframe changes everything. That time she cancelled plans last minute. Instead of spiraling, you practiced self-sufficiency. Her sarcastic jab, a lesson in emotional armor. Even her jealousy becomes a masterclass in setting boundaries without apology. The more you look for the growth hidden in these moments, the less they feel like traps and the more they feel like gifts. Because here's the truth: the strongest men aren't those who avoid tests, they're the ones who have learned to thrive in them. So next time she throws you a curveball, smile inwardly. The obstacle isn't in your way, it is the way. Imagine this: she makes a sarcastic comment and your first instinct is to snap back. Or she gives you the silent treatment and you feel that itch to chase her for reassurance. That urge to react, to fill the silence, to fix the tension immediately, it's human. But here's the paradox: the more you surrender to those impulses, the weaker your position becomes. This is where Stoic self-discipline steps in, not as a rigid set of rules, but as your secret weapon for navigating her tests without handing her the upper hand. Self-discipline in Stoicism isn't about punishing yourself or denying emotions. It's about choosing your response instead of letting your reflexes run the show. Think of it like a martial artist trained to absorb a strike without toppling over. She throws a jab, maybe a passive-aggressive, "I guess you're too busy for me," and instead of flinching or over-explaining, you stay rooted. Your discipline becomes your armor. Epictetus, who trained students in Stoic resilience, put it bluntly: no man is free who is not master of himself. In the context of her tests, that mastery means recognizing when your ego or insecurity is itching to take the bait and refusing to let it. Let's get practical. Say she's probing for a reaction with something like, "You're so different around your friends." The undisciplined response, defensiveness. What's that supposed to mean? People-pleasing, "I'll tone it down," or worse, begging for validation. "Do you not like me anymore?" But the Stoic approach: pause, breathe, ask yourself, what's the most principled response here? Maybe it's playful deflection, "Guess I'm a man of mystery." Maybe it's calm curiosity, "What changes do you notice?" The key isn't the specific words, it's the gap between her provocation and your reply. That gap is where discipline lives. Marcus Aurelius modeled this daily. As emperor, he faced constant tests: flattery, betrayal, outright hostility. His journal reveals his practice. When you wake up in the morning, tell yourself, "The people I deal with today will be meddling, ungrateful, arrogant, dishonest, jealous, and surly." Not as a complaint, but as mental preparation. He anticipated tests to avoid being blindsided by them. You can do the same. Before seeing her, remind yourself, "She might test me today. And when she does, I'll respond from integrity, not impulse." Here's the subtle power of this discipline. It strips her tests of their fuel. Most tests, whether intentional or not, thrive on reactive energy. The drama, the emotional charge, the gotcha moment, they collapse when met with steady composure. Picture a toddler throwing a tantrum to get attention. The more you engage, the louder they become. But when you stay calm and unruffled, the performance loses its purpose. Same principle applies here, but let's be clear, this isn't about stonewalling or emotional withdrawal. True Stoic discipline includes kindness. It's the difference between ignoring her jab and rising above it. Seneca wrote, "A gift consists not in what is done or given, but in the intention of the giver." Apply that to your responses. Are you replying to her from a place of fear or from a place of strength? Are you trying to win or to communicate? Discipline aligns your actions with your values, not her moods. Build this muscle incrementally. Start with small tests: the eye rolls, the backhanded compliments. Notice the urge to react, then consciously delay. Count to 3. Smile, respond on your terms. Over time, you'll catch yourself before the heat of the moment dictates your behavior. And here's the beautiful side effect. The more disciplined you become, the fewer tests she'll throw. Why? Because true confidence, the kind that doesn't buckle under pressure, is the ultimate deterrent to mind games. So the next time you feel that knee-jerk reaction bubbling up, remember, discipline isn't restraint. It's liberation. It's the difference between being a puppet to her whims and being the architect of your own composure. And that is how you pass the test without even playing the game. Picture this: you're having a deep conversation with her and you decide to speak your truth. Maybe it's setting a boundary, admitting a mistake, or even expressing a need you've kept quiet about. But instead of the understanding you hoped for, she reacts with defensiveness or dismissal. That sting of disappointment, it's not just about her response, it's about the quiet question it triggers in you. Was I wrong to say that? This is where Stoicism offers a radical shift. Focus not on how she reacts, but on why you acted. The Stoics called this virtue ethics, the idea that your moral character, not external outcomes, defines a life well lived. Marcus Aurelius framed it as, waste no more time arguing what a good man should be one. In relationships, that means acting from wisdom, courage, justice, and self-control, regardless of whether she validates you for it. Because here's the truth: when you tie your actions to her approval, you hand her the power to label them as right or wrong. But when you root them in virtue, no reaction can cheapen their worth. Let's break this down. Wisdom is knowing when to speak up and when to listen, not because she'll reward you, but because it's the right thing to do. Courage is expressing hard truths even if she withdraws, because silence would betray your self-respect. Justice means treating her fairly, even when she's unfair to you. And self-control, that's refusing to shrink or exaggerate just to manipulate her emotions. These virtues become your compass, and her reactions merely weather something you notice but don't let steer you. Think of it like a sailor. A skilled captain doesn't curse the wind for changing, he adjusts his sails. Similarly, her mood swings aren't a verdict on your worth, they're just conditions to navigate. Epictetus, who taught Stoicism to everyday people, put it bluntly: if you want to improve, be content to be thought foolish and stupid. In other words, if you're acting with integrity, her misunderstanding or frustration doesn't diminish your choice. It reveals her capacity to meet it. Here's a real-world example. Say she accuses you of being selfish for working late, and the old you might scramble to justify, apologize, or even overcompensate by canceling commitments. The virtue-focused you pause, you ask, did I act selfishly? If yes, you own it, not to placate her, but because justice demands accountability. If no, you stand firm, not to defy her, but because courage honors your truth. Either way, her approval isn't the prize. The prize is knowing you didn't betray yourself. This shift is freeing, but let's be honest, it's not easy. We're wired to seek validation, especially from those we care about. That's why the Stoics practiced premeditatio malorum, imagining worst-case scenarios to detach from their emotional punch. Picture her walking away because you set a boundary. Visualize her rolling her eyes at your honesty. Sit with that discomfort, then ask, would I still choose virtue? When the answer is yes, her tests lose their power to shake you. Seneca, who counseled emperors and slaves alike, wrote, "He who is brave is free." In relationships, bravery isn't about grand gestures. It's the quiet resolve to act rightly, even when the cost feels high. Because the irony, the less you need her to applaud your choices, the more she'll respect your consistency. And if she doesn't, that's her journey. Your only job is to walk yours with your head high, virtues as your guide, and the unshakable peace of knowing you're living, not just pleasing. There's a powerful Stoic exercise called the view from above, a mental zoom out that puts her tests into perspective. Imagine looking down at your life from a satellite's vantage point. From up there, that tense silence over text, that passive-aggressive comment, even that dramatic argument, how significant do they really seem? Probably about as big as a single pixel on a screen. That's the essence of this practice, shrinking emotional reactions by expanding your perspective. Marcus Aurelius used this technique daily. As emperor, he faced endless political traps and personal betrayals. In his private writings, he'd remind himself, think of the whole of existence of which you are the tiniest part, not to dismiss his struggles but to remember their scale. When she gives you the cold shoulder or tests your patience, that same zoom out works wonders. Suddenly, her mood isn't a hurricane, it's a passing cloud in an enormous sky. Here's how to apply it. Say she picks a fight over something trivial like how you loaded the dishwasher. The old you might react with frustration or defensiveness. But with the view from above, you pause, you visualize the argument from a decade in the future. Will this matter then? Unlikely. You picture her stress, your stress, the room you're in, the city beyond it, the planet spinning silently in space. From that distance, the tension loses its grip. This isn't about avoiding conflict, it's about refusing to inflate it. Epictetus taught that men are disturbed not by things, but by the views which they take of them. That text she left on read isn't inherently painful, it's the story you attach to it. Does she not care? Is this a power move that stings? The view from above starves those stories of oxygen. You see the test for what it is, a fleeting moment, not a defining one. Practical tip, pair this with physical grounding. When her test triggers you, step outside if you can. Look at the sky, breathe deeply, feel the vastness around you. Seneca wrote, "The universe is change, life is opinion." Her behavior is just a ripple in that infinite change. Your opinion, how much weight you give it, is the only thing you control. Over time, this practice rewires your reactions. Tests that once felt earth-shattering become minor blips. You'll catch yourself mid-reaction thinking, in 5 years, will this even be a memory? That's the Stoic superpower, not numbing yourself to emotions, but seeing them in their true proportion. And when she senses your unshakable calm, something shifts. Without the drama, without the overreactions, the tests lose their purpose, because the ultimate pass isn't reacting perfectly, it's realizing how little her tests truly need to matter. Consider this, she's been distant all day, and you can feel a storm brewing. The tension is thick, and part of you is bracing for the moment she finally unloads. But here's the twist. What if you'd already played out this scenario in your mind, not with anxiety, but with strategy? That's premeditatio malorum, the Stoic practice of premeditating challenges before they happen. It's not about pessimism, it's about inoculation. By mentally rehearsing her potential tests, you drain them of their power to surprise or derail you. The Stoics didn't wait for disaster to strike, they trained for it. Seneca would visualize losing his wealth, his status, even his loved ones, not to dwell in gloom, but to realize, I can endure this. Apply that to relationships. Imagine her canceling plans last minute, criticizing your choices, or giving you the silent treatment. Now, imagine responding with calm detachment instead of frustration or neediness. That mental rehearsal rewires your reflexes. When the real test comes, it feels familiar, not alarming. Here's how to practice it. Start small. What if she compares me to her ex today? Play out the scenario, feel the sting of that jab, then consciously choose your response. Maybe humor, guess you've got a type, or curiosity. What makes you bring him up? The goal isn't scripting dialogue, it's conditioning your nervous system to stay steady. Epictetus, who trained students in Stoic resilience, drilled this. Is this what you practiced for? When her test arrives, you're not reacting, you're executing. But there's a critical nuance. This isn't paranoia. Modern psychology calls it stress inoculation, and the key is balance. Don't obsess over every possible slight. Focus on recurring patterns. Does she often test your patience when she's stressed? Probe for jealousy when she feels insecure. Those are your training zones. Marcus Aurelius prepared for Rome's scheming politicians by writing, "Begin each day by telling yourself, today I shall meet interference, ingratitude, insolence." His anticipation wasn't fear, it was readiness. Try this tonight. Reflect on one test she frequently throws your way. Close your eyes and visualize it unfolding. Notice where your body tenses, where your mind races. Now rewrite the script. See yourself pausing, breathing, and responding with the calm of someone who's unshakable. The more vividly you rehearse, the more automatic it becomes, because here's the secret: her tests often work because they catch you unprepared. Premeditatio malorum turns the tables. You're no longer a passenger in those moments, you're the pilot, and the ripple effect, she'll sense the shift. Tests thrive on reactive energy. When she realizes you've already anticipated and neutralized her moves, the game loses its appeal. Seneca put it best: fate leads the willing and drags along the reluctant. By mentally preparing, you stop being dragged. You walk in willing, eyes open, unafraid. That's how you transform her tests from traps into proof of your growth. Imagine waking up tomorrow to silence, no text from her, no plans, no connection. How does that thought land in your chest? For most of us, it hits like a punch. But what if that discomfort, that fear of losing her, could actually become your anchor? This is the counterintuitive power of negative visualization, a Stoic exercise where you intentionally imagine worst-case scenarios, not to spiral into fear, but to liberate yourself from it. The Stoics called this premeditatio malorum, the premeditation of evils. It sounds grim, but its purpose is anything but. By regularly visualizing loss, her walking away, her rejecting you, her tests becoming relentless, you accomplish something profound. You inoculate yourself against the panic those possibilities trigger. Seneca wrote, "He who has anticipated the coming of troubles takes away their power when they arrive." In relationships, that means sitting with the thought of her absence before it happens, so if it ever does, you're not blindsided. And if it doesn't, you've already neutralized the fear that fuels neediness. Here's how this plays out in practice. Close your eyes and picture her telling you, "I need space," indefinitely. Feel the weight of those words. Notice the tension in your hands, the tightness in your throat. Now ask, what would I do next? Not how would I beg her to stay, but how would I rebuild? Maybe you'd dive into neglected passions, reconnect with friends, redirect your energy into growth. This mental rehearsal doesn't just soften the blow of potential loss, it reveals your resilience. And that realization changes everything, because neediness isn't about love, it's about fear. The fear that without her approval, you're incomplete. Negative visualization shatters that illusion by forcing you to confront the truth: you'd survive. You might ache, you might stumble, but you'd continue. Epictetus, born into slavery, understood this deeply. It's not things that disturb us, but our judgments about things. When you stop judging losing her as catastrophic, you stop clinging to her validation like a lifeline. Try this exercise for 1 week. Spend 5 minutes each morning visualizing life without her. Not as a punishment, but as a meditation. Notice where your mind goes. Do you fixate on loneliness or discover hidden strength? The goal isn't to push her away, but to pull yourself back to the unshakable truth that your worth isn't tied to her presence. Marcus Aurelius practiced this daily, reminding himself, when you lose someone, don't grieve, be grateful you had them at all. That shift from possession to appreciation is where neediness dies and grounded love begins. Here's the paradox: the more comfortable you become with the thought of losing her, the less likely you are to. Why? Because desperation repels while self-assurance attracts. When she senses your peace isn't contingent on her moods, her tests lose their stakes. Negative visualization isn't about expecting the worst, it's about knowing you can handle it. And that's the foundation of every healthy relationship: two whole people choosing each other, not two halves grasping out of fear. You're mid-conversation when she drops one of those loaded questions. So, do you even miss me when we're not together? And instantly you feel the trap, your pulse quickens, your palms get damp, and words start tumbling out before your brain even processes them. That's the knee-jerk reaction talking, and here's the problem. When emotions run the show, you're not in control. Stoicism offers a lifeline, a deliberate pause between her test and your response, creating space to choose your next move instead of surrendering to reflex. This is the difference between reacting and responding. Reacting is emotional autopilot defensiveness, people-pleasing, or anger bubbling up unchecked. Responding, that strategy. It's the Stoic practice of inserting a buffer between stimulus and action, a skill Epictetus called the pause button of the wise. Picture a chess player. She makes a move, and instead of slamming a piece immediately, he stops, breathes, considers the board. That's the gap where your power lies. Let's make it practical. Next time she throws a curveball, a sudden accusation, a backhanded compliment, try this. Inhale for 4 seconds, hold for 4, exhale for 4. That 12-second pause is your reset button. In that span, ask yourself 3 Stoic questions. Is this true? Is this necessary? Is this kind? Not every thought deserves a voice. Not every provocation deserves engagement. Marcus Aurelius journaled this reminder. The nearer a man comes to a calm mind, the closer he is to strength. That calm isn't passive, it's the eye of the storm. Here's why this works. Tests thrive on chaos. When she sees her comment ruffled you, it reinforces the behavior. But when you pause, when you let her words hang in the air just long enough to unnerve her, the dynamic flips. Take the classic, "You're so insensitive." The reactive reply, "No, I'm not, you're overreacting." Cue the argument, the Stoic response, silence, a slow breath, then with measured calm, "Help me understand what you mean." No defensiveness, no validation, just a neutral invitation to either clarify or retreat. But the pause isn't just about breathing, it's about auditing your impulses. Seneca described anger as brief insanity, a fire that burns brightest when fed. Your girlfriend's test might light the match, but you decide whether to pour gasoline or walk away. For example, she snaps, "You're just like your father," knowing it's a trigger. The reactive you bites back or crumbles, the Stoic you might even smile. Interesting comparison. What part? Suddenly, the barb loses its sting because you controlled the narrative. Build this habit systematically. Start with low stakes. Test her eye roll at your joke, her sigh when you're late. Practice the pause there, then level up to bigger challenges. Over time, you'll notice something transformative. The space between her words and your reply widens naturally. And in that space, that's where your unshakable self lives. The version of test can unsettle. Because here's the truth she might not realize yet. A man who can't be rushed into reaction can't be manipulated. There's a fundamental shift that happens when you stop needing her approval. It's like stepping off a roller coaster you didn't realize you were riding. Suddenly, her moods aren't emergencies, her silences aren't punishments, and her tests lose their power to dictate your worth. This is the essence of Stoic self-sufficiency, building an inner citadel so strong that her approval, or lack of it, can't shake your foundation. It's not about dismissing her feelings, it's about reclaiming your emotional sovereignty. Think of it like this. Imagine you're holding a priceless artifact, something fragile and irreplaceable. Now imagine handing it to her and saying, "Here, my self-worth, be careful with it." That's what we do when we tie our value to her reactions. Stoicism asks a radical question. What if you stopped handing it over? What if your sense of worth came from an unshakable internal scorecard? Your integrity, your growth, your virtues, rather than her fleeting moods. Epictetus, who taught Stoicism to ordinary people, put it bluntly: if you wish to improve, be content to appear clueless or foolish in the eyes of others. In other words, her disapproval only stings if you've already agreed it matters. Here's where this becomes practical. Say she tests you with, "You don't care about me as much as her ex/friend's boyfriend." The approval-seeking response, panicked reassurance, of course I do, I'll prove it. Or worse, resentful compliance, fine, I'll call you 5 times a day. The Stoic response, you might chuckle and say, I care in my own way, then change the subject, not because you're dismissive, but because you recognize her comparison for what it is, a bid for external validation. And when you refuse to play, the test collapses under its own weight. Marcus Aurelius modeled this daily. As emperor, he faced constant flattery and manipulation. In his private journal, he wrote, "It never ceases to amaze me. We all love ourselves more than other people, but care more about their opinion than our own." That's the paradox. We prioritize her approval over our own self-respect, then wonder why her tests feel like life or death. The shift happens when you realize her opinion is just that, an opinion. It's data, not doctrine, but let's be honest, detaching isn't easy. We're wired to seek connection, and approval feels like connection's currency. That's why the Stoics practiced ataraxia, a state of unshakable calm. It's not about becoming emotionally numb. It's about anchoring yourself so deeply in your values that storms can't capsize you. Picture a tree in heavy wind. The leaves, your reactions might sway, but the roots, your core worth, hold firm. Here's how to cultivate this for 1 week. Track every time you seek or react to her approval. Did you tone down your humor because she seemed unamused? Agree to something against your gut to avoid tension. Note it. Then ask, if her opinion vanished tomorrow, would I still choose this? Over time, you'll start spotting the leash and slowly loosen its grip. The irony, the less you need her validation, the more she'll respect your boundaries. Tests thrive on insecurity. When she senses your worth isn't up for negotiation, the games lose their purpose. Seneca, who navigated toxic politics with stoic grace, wrote, "A man's as miserable as he thinks he is." Translation, her tests only have the power you give them. Withdraw that power and suddenly you're not passing her tests, you're transcending them. Marcus Aurelius never intended his private journal to be read by the world. Those intimate pages, later titled Meditations, were just his raw reflections on power, pain, and personal growth. Yet 2,000 years later, we're still studying them. Why? Because he wasn't just venting emotions onto parchment, he was objectifying them, taking the chaos of human experience and holding it at arm's length to examine it under the clear light of reason. This is the untapped power of journaling when facing her tests, transforming emotional whirlwinds into cold, hard data you can learn from. Picture this: she's just hit you with a classic test. Maybe she flirted with someone at the bar to gauge your reaction, or she cancelled your date last minute with a vague excuse. Your instinct might be to call a friend and vent. Can you believe she did that? Or ruminate silently, replaying the moment with rising frustration. Here's where the Stoic approach diverges. Instead of feeding the emotional fire, you open a notebook or your phone's notes app and dissect the event like a scientist studying a specimen. What exactly happened? What did I feel in that moment? What part of this is within my control? This simple act, translating subjective hurt into objective analysis, disarms the test's emotional charge. Epictetus taught that men are disturbed not by things, but by the opinions they form about them. Journaling exposes those hidden opinions. For example, her cancelling plans might trigger 2 layers of pain. The fact she texted can't make it, and your story she's losing interest. Writing forces you to separate the two. You might discover your reaction says more about your abandonment fears than her actions. Marcus Aurelius modeled this with brutal honesty, scribbling reminders like, when you wake up in the morning, tell yourself, the people I deal with today will be meddling, ungrateful, arrogant. Not to brood, but to prepare to spot patterns before they trigger him. Here's how to apply this today. First, record the test factually, like a courtroom stenographer. July 12th, she compared me to her ex at dinner, said I'm less spontaneous. No adjectives, no drama, just the event. Next, log your visceral reaction. Felt heat in my chest, wanted to defend myself. later scrolled her Instagram looking for signs she misses him. This isn't self-judgment, it's reconnaissance. Finally, extract the lesson. My defensiveness reveals insecurity about being enough. Her comment mirrors my own fear. Next time, acknowledge interesting observation, then redirect. What does spontaneity look like to you? The magic happens in the rereading. A week later, that entry becomes a mirror showing your growth areas. Maybe you notice defensiveness crops up whenever she mentions the past. Now you've identified a trigger to work on. Or perhaps you see that her tests spike when she's stressed at work, revealing they're not about you at all. Seneca, who journaled daily, called this digesting life. By metabolizing experiences through writing, you extract wisdom without emotional indigestion. But here's the key: this isn't a diary for dwelling, it's a lab for iterating. Treat each entry like a post-mortem of a boxing round. Where did I leave an opening? What feints worked? Over time, you'll spot her testing patterns, the guilt trips, the jealousy baits, and your reflexive weak spots, people-pleasing, ego reactions. Then, like Marcus drafting notes before facing Rome's scheming senators, you'll strategize. If she tests X, I'll respond with Y, not to manipulate, but to align with my values. Journaling does something else profound. It proves your progress. Flipping back to old entries, you'll see tests that once shattered your peace now barely register. That's the Stoic transformation in real time, not the absence of challenges, but the evolution of your ability to meet them. As Marcus wrote, the obstacle becomes the way. Her tests, they're just the whetstone sharpening you, and your journal, that's the record of the blade you're becoming. There's a moment in every relationship when her tests stop feeling like obstacles and start feeling like gifts, not because they're pleasant, but because they're yours. That shift from resistance to acceptance is the essence of Amor Fati, the Stoic practice of loving your fate. It's not about enjoying conflict or pretending her moods don't sting. It's about recognizing that every test she throws your way is woven into the fabric of your growth and choosing to embrace it rather than fight it. Think of it like this. Imagine you're hiking a mountain trail and suddenly the path splits. One route is smooth, sunny, predictable. The other, rocky, steep, unclear. Most of us would grumble about the rough path, resent the blisters, and obsess over how much easier things could be. But the Stoic asks a different question. What if this rough terrain is exactly what I need to become stronger? That's Amor Fati in action, seeing the obstacle not as a detour from your journey, but as part of the route itself. Now apply that to her tests. The silent treatment isn't just discomfort, it's a chance to practice patience. Her jealousy isn't just drama, it's a mirror showing where your boundaries need fortifying. Even her most frustrating habits become grist for your mill, polishing your resilience like a whetstone sharpens a blade. Marcus Aurelius, who faced betrayal and war, wrote in his journal, "The impediment to action advances action." What stands in the way becomes the way. In other words, her tests aren't blocking your path, they are the path. Here's the practical shift. Next time she cancels plans last minute or needles you with a loaded question, pause and say to yourself, this too is part of my training. Not with resignation, but with curiosity. What's this moment revealing? Maybe it's exposing your fear of abandonment or testing your ability to stay calm under pressure. Epictetus, who endured slavery before teaching philosophy, put it starkly, difficulties are things that show what men are. Her tests are the fire that reveals whether you're made of straw or steel. But let's be clear, this isn't passive surrender. Loving your fate means engaging with her tests on your terms. Say she's criticizing your career choices to provoke a reaction. The old you might argue or seek validation. The Stoic you might smile and say, I appreciate your concern, but I'm at peace with my path. No defensiveness, no capitulation, just an unshakable acknowledgement that her opinion is part of the landscape, not the compass. Seneca practiced this daily. Exiled to a barren island by a jealous emperor, he didn't waste energy cursing his fate. Instead, he wrote letters about the beauty of simplicity, the value of solitude. Later, when recalled to Rome, he wasn't bitter, he was wiser. That's the Amor Fati mindset, trusting that life and love isn't happening to you but for you. So the next time her test lands, try this reframe, thank you. Not to her face, that would probably confuse her, but silently to the universe, thank you for the chance to practice patience. Thank you for revealing where I'm still reactive. Thank you for reminding me that my peace isn't for sale. Over time, you'll notice something liberating. The tests that once felt like attacks start feeling like allies, rough teachers, yes, but teachers nonetheless. Because here's the secret the Stoics knew. When you stop fighting reality, reality stops fighting you. Her moods, her tests, her unpredictability, they don't disappear. But your suffering around them does, and in that space you'll find something unexpected. Not just the strength to handle her, but the grace to appreciate her exactly as she is. Consider the last time she lobbed a passive-aggressive comment your way, something like, "Must be nice to have so much free time," when you didn't immediately reply to her text. The instinctive reaction to defend yourself, explain your busy day, or even fire back with a snappy retort. But here's the paradox: the more you engage, the more you feed the energy of her test. Stoicism offers a counterintuitive weapon here, one that's deceptively simple yet ruthlessly effective. It's not a clever comeback or a heartfelt plea. It's silence. The Stoics revered the discipline of speech, not as a tactic to manipulate, but as a way to reclaim sovereignty over your energy. Marcus Aurelius scribbled in his journal, "If it's not right, don't do it. If it's not true, don't say it." In the heat of a test, those words transform into a mantra. If it's not constructive, don't engage. Silence isn't passive avoidance, it's active restraint. When she tosses a loaded question like, "Do you even care about this relationship?" and you meet it with quiet calm instead of frantic reassurance, something unexpected happens. The tension doesn't escalate, it evaporates, because tests thrive on reaction. No reaction, no reward. This isn't about stonewalling or emotional withdrawal. True Stoic silence is presence without participation. Picture a chess master who, when his opponent makes a reckless move, doesn't immediately counter. He leans back, studies the board, and lets the recklessness hang in the air. That pause, that refusal to play at a tempo, is what disarms the game. Take the classic guilt trip. "I guess you'd rather be with your friends." The unguarded response might be, "That's not true." Or, "I spend all my time with you." But the Stoic, he might simply nod and say, "I hear you," then let the silence stretch. No defense, no fuel, just an unshakable calm that says, "Your attempt to provoke me won't work." Epictetus, who trained students in Stoic resilience, drilled this principle. "We have 2 ears and 1 mouth, so we can listen twice as much as we speak." In relationship tests, listening, truly listening, often reveals the insecurity beneath her words. Maybe her jab about your free time isn't about you at all, but her own fear of neglect. When you resist the urge to fill the silence with explanations, you create space for her to sit with that discomfort, and often that's when real communication begins. But mastering silence requires more than just biting your tongue. It's about cultivating an inner stillness that no barb can pierce. Seneca, who faced Emperor Nero's erratic cruelty, wrote, "Speech is the mirror of the mind." When your mind is anchored in self-assurance, your silence reflects that stability. Contrast that with the man who clenches his jaw, fists balled, forcing himself not to speak. That's not silence, it's suppressed reaction, and she'll sense the difference. So how do you practice this? Start small. Next time she mutters a sarcastic remark under her breath, let it land without acknowledgement. Not with resentment, but with detachment, like watching a cloud pass. Gradually level up to bigger tests. When she accuses you of being distant, try responding with, "I'm sorry you feel that way," then let the silence linger. Watch how often she backtracks or clarifies when her words aren't met with the expected resistance. there's a profound shift that happens when you master this art. Her words lose their power to hook you. You realize you don't owe a reaction to every provocation. And ironically, the less you rush to fill the silence, the more she'll start to fill it with authenticity, not tests. Because silence, wielded with Stoic intent, isn't a wall. It's an invitation, one that only those ready for real connection will accept. Think about the last time you muttered under your breath after she gave you the silent treatment, "Here we go again," or vented to your friends about how unreasonable her tests are. It feels justified in the moment, like you're releasing steam. But here's what most men miss. Every complaint, every groan of frustration isn't just words. It's reinforcement. It's you telling your nervous system this is unbearable and chiseling that belief deeper into your psyche. Stoicism flips this script with a radical alternative: gratitude. Not the hollow, positive vibes only kind, but a strategic recalibration of how you frame her tests, one that transforms resentment into resilience. Marcus Aurelius, who ruled Rome during plagues and wars, wrote in his private journal, "When you arise in the morning, think of what a precious privilege it is to be alive, to breathe, to think, to enjoy, to love." Now imagine applying that lens to her most frustrating behaviors. The eye rolls, they're reminders to sharpen your patience. The jealousy traps, they're testing your emotional discipline. Even the passive-aggressive comments become opportunities to practice the Stoic art of withholding judgment. Because here's the truth: complaining about her tests doesn't change them. It only weakens your ability to handle them. Let's break this down with science. Neuroplasticity, the brain's ability to rewire itself, means every time you vocalize frustration, "She's so manipulative," you strengthen neural pathways tied to victimhood. But when you consciously reframe, "This is training my emotional endurance," you build pathways tied to empowerment. Epictetus, born into slavery, understood this. He who complains about the weather complains about the nature of things. In relationships, complaining about her tests is like cursing the rain. It still falls, but now you're soaked and miserable. Practical shift: for 1 week, ban complaints about her behavior, not just aloud, but in your thoughts too. When she cancels plans last minute, instead of grumbling, silently note, "This is my chance to practice adaptability." When she compares you to her ex, smile inwardly, "Time to exercise my unshakable self-worth." This isn't delusion, it's tactical reframing. Ancient Stoics called it premeditatio malorum, anticipating challenges to strip them of their sting. By meeting her tests with gratitude for the growth they offer, you accomplish 2 things. You disarm their emotional impact, and you signal to yourself and to her that her tactics can't rattle you. But there's a critical nuance here. Stoic gratitude isn't about being a doormat. It's not thanking her for cruelty or excusing genuine toxicity. It's about recognizing that within every test lies a hidden curriculum. Seneca, who endured exile and betrayal, wrote, "A gem cannot be polished without friction, nor a man perfected without trials. Her tests are your friction." The silent treatments polish your patience, the guilt trips hone your boundaries, the jealousy probes temper your self-assurance. Here's the paradox: the less you complain, the less there is to complain about. When she realizes her tests don't elicit frustration but fortitude, their purpose dissolves. Because tests thrive on reaction, and gratitude is the ultimate non-reaction. It's not resistance, it's transcendence. So the next time she throws a curveball, pause, whisper to yourself, "Thank you for this workout." Then watch as what once felt like an attack now feels like an invitation to rise. You're in the middle of an argument, and suddenly she says something sharp, a comment that slices right through you. Instantly, your mind races backward, replaying every time she said something similar, and forward, projecting how this might escalate. But here's the problem. While you're lost in these mental time travels, the present moment, the only place where you can actually respond, slips away. This is where Stoic mindfulness becomes your anchor. It's not about emptying your mind or pretending emotions don't exist. It's about training yourself to stand firmly in the now, where her tests can't drag you into the past or future. The Stoics called this practice prosouch attention, or vigilant presence. Epictetus described it as the first and most necessary task of the philosopher, because without it, all other principles crumble. Imagine you're driving a car. If you're obsessing over yesterday's wrong turn or worrying about a potential flat tire 10 miles ahead, you're not truly driving. You're just steering while distracted. The same applies in relationships. When she tests you with a sudden mood shift, a loaded question, or silence, your ability to stay present determines whether you navigate skillfully or crash into reactivity. Here's how this works in practice. Say she snaps, "You never listen to me." The untrained mind might leap to defensiveness. "That's not true. Remember last week when I..." Or future tripping. "If she thinks this now, we're doomed." But Stoic mindfulness pulls you back to what's actually happening. Her words, the tone, the tension in your chest. You notice these without judgment, like a scientist observing data. Then, from that calm center, you respond, not from past wounds or future fears, but from clarity. Maybe you say, "Tell me what you need me to hear right now." No baggage, no projections, just presence. Marcus Aurelius modeled this daily. As emperor, he faced constant threats, betrayals, wars, plagues, yet his journal reveals a man anchored in the present. Confine yourself to the present. He didn't ignore the past or future. He simply refused to let them hijack his now. Apply this to her tests. When she dredges up an old grievance, "You always do this." The Stoic doesn't take the bait. He stays with what is. "I hear you're upset. Let's talk about what's happening today." This doesn't dismiss her feelings. It grounds the conversation where it can actually be resolved. But staying present isn't passive. It's an active discipline. Start by training your attention like a muscle. Next time she tests you, notice where your mind goes. Are you reliving last month's fight, catastrophizing about tomorrow? Gently guide yourself back to your senses, the feel of your feet on the floor, the sound of her voice, the rhythm of your breath. Seneca likened the mind to water. When it's turbulent, it's hard to see. When it's calm, everything becomes clear. Her tests will stir the waters. Your job isn't to stop the stirring, it's to let the sediment settle so you can see the bottom. Here's the paradox: the more present you are, the fewer tests she'll throw. Why? Because tests often stem from her own past hurts or future anxieties. When she senses you're fully here, not haunted by ghosts of old arguments or fears of looming conflicts, she's less likely to weaponize them. Think of it like this: a child acts out for attention when a parent is distracted. But when the parent is fully engaged, the behavior often quiets. Same dynamic applies. So the next time tension rises, don't retreat into your head. Plant yourself in the moment. Listen like it's the first and last time you'll hear her voice. Respond like this conversation is the only one that exists, because in Stoicism it is. The past is memory, the future is imagination, but the now, that's where your power lies, and when she sees you wield it, something shifts. The tests don't disappear, but their power to unsettle you does. There comes a point in every relationship where her tests stop being about curiosity and start crossing into territory that shakes your core, the moments when her words or actions bump up against values you refuse to compromise. This is where Stoic justice isn't just a principle, it's your quiet armor. Justice in the Stoic sense isn't about fairness in the way we typically think of it. It's about honoring what's right by your own code, not as retaliation, but as unshakable truth. Picture this: she needles you about canceling plans with friends to spend more time with her, or she makes a snide remark about your career ambitions. The old version of you might swallow the frustration to keep peace, or worse, lash out in resentment, but the Stoic approach, it's neither. It's the art of drawing a line without drawing blood. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "If it is not right, do not do it. If it is not true, do not say it." Apply that here. When her tests veer into manipulation, guilt trips, passive aggression, ultimatums, justice means responding with calm clarity, not chaotic emotion. Think of it like a judge delivering a verdict, firm, reasoned, and free from personal offense. For example, say she throws the classic, "If you loved me, you'd ditch your guy's night." The reactive response oscillates between caving, "Fine, I'll cancel," or exploding, "You're so controlling." The Stoic response, a neutral but unyielding, "I love you and I also value my commitments." Let's find another time that works for both of us. No anger, no negotiation of your values, just a boundary wrapped in respect. Here's why this works. Tests often probe for weaknesses in your integrity. When she sees that pressing certain buttons makes you fold or flare up, she'll press them harder. But when you respond with consistent, principled calm, especially when it would be easier to react, you communicate something unexpected, that your boundaries aren't emotional reactions but non-negotiables. Epictetus, who taught that justice begins with self-respect, put it bluntly, any person who doesn't think they're worthy of the best will settle for less. If you want her to honor your values, you must model that they're unassailable. But let's be clear, Stoic boundaries aren't walls, they're gates, open for connection, closed for manipulation. Imagine her testing with silent treatment to force an apology. Instead of chasing her with, "What's wrong? Talk to me," you might say, "I'm here when you're ready to talk, but I won't beg for communication." Then you walk away, not to punish, but to uphold your standard for mutual respect. Seneca, who navigated Nero's toxic court, wrote, "Anger is like a stream dammed up. It's the barriers that make it destructive." When you remove the barrier, your emotional reaction, her tests, lose their destructive power. The key is delivery. Stoic justice never demeans. It's the difference between "stop being so needy" and "I need space to be my best for this relationship." One attacks, the other affirms. Over time, she'll learn a profound lesson. Your yes means yes because your no means no. And paradoxically, that consistency doesn't push her away. It earns her respect because deep down, even the most testing partner craves a man who stands firm, not in ego but in quiet conviction. So the next time her words or actions brush against a boundary, pause. Ask, does this align with my values? If not, respond, don't react. Not with anger, not with apology, but with the calm finality of a man who knows where his lines are drawn. That's how you pass the ultimate test, the one where she isn't just testing your patience but your character. And when she sees that character remains unshaken, something shifts. The tests don't just stop, they become unnecessary. There's a profound shift that happens when you stop seeing her tests as personal attacks and start recognizing them as echoes of her own inner battles. The Stoics called this sympatheia, the understanding that all humans are interconnected, and her actions are rarely about you, but about the storms she's weathering within herself. Picture this, she snaps at you for something trivial, like leaving dishes in the sink. The surface-level interpretation, she's being petty or controlling. But sympatheia asks a different question. What's the unmet need behind this reaction? Maybe her frustration isn't about the dishes at all, but about feeling unheard in broader ways. This principle traces back to Marcus Aurelius's Meditations. When someone irritates you, remember they're only doing what they think is right. Not because their actions are right, but because recognizing their humanity disarms your resentment. Think of it like stepping back from a painting. What looks like a chaotic smear up close reveals its purpose when viewed from a distance. Her tests, especially the most baffling ones, are often cries for reassurance, bids for control in areas where she feels powerless, or even unconscious repetitions of patterns she learned long before she met you. Here's how this transforms your response. Say she tests you with sudden jealousy, accusing you of flirting when you are just being friendly. The reflexive reaction might be defensiveness, "I wasn't doing anything wrong." Or frustration, "Here we go again." But sympatheia reframes it. Her insecurity is speaking, not her logic. Instead of taking the bait, you might respond with calm curiosity. help me understand what triggered this. Not to indulge baseless accusations, but to uncover the root. Often, you'll find it's not about your actions, but an old wound, a past betrayal, a fear of abandonment that she's projecting onto you. Epictetus, who taught that no one chooses to act wrongly but rather from mistaken judgment, would urge you to see her tests as misguided attempts to meet emotional needs. Imagine a child throwing a tantrum. They're not trying to be difficult. They lack the tools to express their hunger or exhaustion. Similarly, her tests might be clumsy efforts to seek validation, security, or connection. This doesn't mean you tolerate toxicity, but it does mean you respond with clarity instead of combat. Practically, this starts with a simple pause. When she acts out, ask yourself, what's the unmet need here? Is she tired, feeling neglected, wrestling with something unrelated to you? Seneca wrote, "All cruelty springs from weakness. Her sharpest tests often come from her softest spots." Your role isn't to fix those spots, that's her work, but to meet them with steadiness instead of mirroring her chaos. But here's the crucial balance. Sympatheia isn't self-sacrifice. It's not absorbing blame for every outburst or dissolving your boundaries to soothe her. It's about discerning the difference between her pain and your responsibility. You can acknowledge that her jealousy stems from insecurity without apologizing for innocently talking to a coworker. You can see her silent treatment as a fear-driven tactic without chasing her to break it. Compassion and self-respect aren't opposites, they're partners. The ripple effect of this mindset is profound. When she senses you're not reacting to her surface-level tests but seeing the struggle beneath them, something shifts. The games lose their edge because sympatheia does something remarkable. It turns confrontation into connection, not always immediately, not perfectly, but steadily. And in that space, you're no longer adversaries navigating a minefield. You're allies, each fighting your own battles, but choosing to fight them side by side. Ever notice how some conversations feel like walking a tightrope? One wrong word and everything goes sideways. That's when humor, wielded with stoic precision, becomes your safety net. Not the biting sarcasm that leaves scars, but the kind that disarms tension while keeping your dignity intact. Epictetus, who knew a thing or two about handling provocation, offered a gem. If someone tried to hand you a bucket of slop, would you take it? No, then why take their insults? That's the essence of strategic humor, recognizing her test for what it is, a bucket you don't have to accept, and flipping it with a wink instead of a wound. Take the classic test, "You're so clueless sometimes." The reactive response, defensiveness, "No, I'm not," or counterattack, "Well, you're not exactly a genius." The Stoic humorist, he might grin and say, "Clueless is my middle name. My parents had a vision." Suddenly, the barb loses its sting because you've refused to treat it as a verdict. This isn't about dodging accountability. It's about refusing to let her mood dictate your self-worth. Marcus Aurelius modeled this in his reign, joking with advisors who tried to bait him, then noting privately, "The best revenge is not to be like your enemy." In relationships, the best response to a test is often to not take it seriously. But there's an art to this. Stoic humor isn't deflection for avoidance, it's clarity dressed in levity. Say she throws a jealousy test. Your assistant seems really friendly. Instead of over-explaining, "It's just work," or getting defensive, "You're being ridiculous." You might chuckle and say, "Should I be worried about you and the mailman? Those porch chats seem intense." By playfully reflecting the absurdity, you expose the test without escalating conflict. Epictetus would nod at this approach. He taught that most insults are like children's scribbles, meaningless unless you frame them as masterpieces. The key is tone. Humor that lands like a feather, not a brick. Seneca, who advised Nero, a man who desperately needed more laughs, wrote, "A joke spares resentment, and a laugh at the right moment cuts difficulties short." Notice the timing, the right moment. When she's genuinely hurt, humor can feel dismissive. but when she's testing, probing for a reaction, lightness reveals the game without calling it out. Picture her sighing, "You'd rather watch sports than talk to me." The knee-jerk reaction is guilt, "Fine, I'll turn it off," or resentment, "You knew I had the game on." The Stoic alternative, a smirk and "I'm multitasking," listening with one ear, pretending to care about the score with the other. Suddenly, the tension isn't a wall, it's a door you've held open for her to walk through, or not. Mastering this takes practice. Start small. Next time she rolls her eyes at your cooking, lean into it. 5-star chefs weep when they see my scrambled eggs. When she nitpicks your driving, safety third, after speed and style. The goal isn't to become a stand-up comic, but to cultivate a spirit that refuses to be baited. Because here's the secret she might not realize. Humor isn't just a shield against her tests, it's a mirror. When she sees her provocations met with a grin instead of gritted teeth, the game loses its fun. And sometimes the best way to pass a test is to show you're already laughing on the other side of it. Every great oak started as an acorn that endured storms. That's the Stoic perspective on her tests, not as petty power struggles, but as the necessary friction that forges resilience over time. Think of the last time she hit you with a cutting remark or an emotional withdrawal. In the moment, it stung, but zoom out. What if that discomfort was actually sculpting you into someone unshakable? That's the essence of long-term growth, seeing each test as a rep in the gym of emotional stamina, where short-term discomfort pays compound interest in wisdom. Marcus Aurelius, who ruled an empire amid constant betrayals, wrote, "The obstacle is the way, not around, not despite, through." Apply that to relationship tests. Her silent treatment isn't just a night of frustration, it's practice in patience. Her jealousy isn't just drama, it's a masterclass in setting boundaries with empathy. Even her most baffling behaviors become part of your curriculum if you choose to enroll. Epictetus put it bluntly, difficulties show men what they're made of. Her tests are the fire that reveals whether you're made of straw or steel. Here's the mental shift. Stop asking, "How do I make this stop?" and start asking, "What is this teaching me?" Say she frequently cancels plans last minute. The short-term reaction is resentment or people-pleasing. "I'll just never make plans." The long-term Stoic response. You recognize it as training in adaptability, learning to enjoy your own company, to pivot without crumbling. Over time, you'll notice something surprising. The very behaviors that once triggered you now barely land because you've built calluses where you used to have raw nerves. But this isn't about enduring abuse or tolerating toxicity. It's about discernment, knowing which tests are growing pains and which are red flags. The Stoics didn't advocate passive suffering, they preached purposeful endurance. Picture a sailor. He doesn't curse the wind, but he also doesn't sail into a hurricane. When her tests cross into disrespect, your growth lies not in tolerating them, but in upholding your standards with calm firmness. Seneca, who survived Nero's court, wrote, "A gem cannot be polished without friction. The friction refines you, but you decide when it's polishing and when it's eroding." Practical tip: keep a growth ledger. After each test, jot down what it revealed, not about her, but about you. Did you react defensively? That's a signal to work on emotional regulation. Did you people please? Time to strengthen your boundaries. Over weeks, you'll see patterns not just in her behavior, but in your evolution. You'll notice how last month's panic is this month's pause, how yesterday's triggers are today's trivialities. The beauty of this approach, it transforms you from a passive recipient of her tests to an active participant in your own growth. No longer do her moods dictate your peace, they become the weather conditioning your resilience. And when she senses that her tests aren't breaking you but building you, something shifts. The games lose their thrill because the prize, your reaction, is no longer for the taking. Because here's the secret the Stoics knew: the strongest men aren't those who avoid storms, but those who learn to dance in the rain, and every test she throws, it's just another step in your dance. History offers us a masterclass in composure, men who faced far greater trials than a girlfriend's silent treatment or probing questions, yet never lost their footing. Take Cato the Younger, the Roman senator who stood unflinching as his political enemies mocked him in public. While others scrambled for cheap comebacks or melted under pressure, he'd simply smile and continue reading a scroll, treating their jabs like background noise. That's the power of studying Stoic role models. You're not just reading ancient stories, you're downloading blueprints for unshakable calm that you can apply the next time she lobs a loaded question your way. Imagine her throwing one of those classic tests, say, comparing you to an ex with a pointed. He never forgot anniversaries like you do. The untrained mind might lash out, well, he's an ex for a reason. Or crumble into apologetic overpromising, but picture Cato in your shoes. When his rivals hurled insults, he didn't engage. He'd wait, let the words hang, then respond with deliberate neutrality. Channeling that energy, you might say, sounds like that mattered to you. What would celebrating look like moving forward? No defensiveness, no ego. Just calm clarity that redirects the test into constructive dialogue. The Stoics didn't just preach principles, they left us living proof of their effectiveness. Seneca, forced to navigate Nero's volatile court, wrote letters dripping with wisdom while walking a political tightrope daily. Epictetus, born a slave, turned his suffering into a philosophy that freed minds centuries after his death. These weren't theoretical thinkers, they were men who faced real persecution, betrayal, and emotional warfare. When you study their lives, you're not memorizing quotes, you're inheriting a mindset. The next time she gives you the cold shoulder, channel Marcus Aurelius, who ruled Rome during plague and war yet journaled. You have power over your mind, not outside events. Suddenly, her silence isn't a punishment, it's an opportunity to practice sovereignty over your own peace. Here's how to bring this into practice. Keep a Stoic role model journal. When she tests you, pause and ask, what would Cato do here? Jot down the scenario and how your chosen figure might navigate it. For example, she cancelled plans last minute to test if I'd get needy. Seneca faced worse exile to Corsica and wrote, a gem cannot be polished without friction. Response, wish her a good night, turn my focus to a personal project. Over time, these mental models rewire your reflexes. Her provocations become prompts to embody the giants whose shoulders you stand on. But there's a critical nuance. Emulating Stoic figures isn't about mimicking Stoic stereotypes. It's not about clamping down on emotions or acting indifferent. Cato wept openly when his brother died. Seneca grieved for friends. Their strength wasn't in suppressing feeling, but in refusing to let feeling dictate their integrity. When your girlfriend accuses you of being distant, you're not channeling Stoicism by shutting down further. You're channeling it when you respond with measured honesty. I care deeply, but I also value my solitude. Let's find a balance. That's the real lesson. These men weren't statues. They were fully alive, fully feeling, and fully in control of how they chose to act. The beauty of this practice, over time, you stop needing to ask, what would Cato do? Because his poise becomes your second nature. Her tests lose their power to unsettle you because you've spent mental time with masters of adversity. And when she senses that her words bounce off a calm forged in the fires of history's greatest trials, something shifts. The games slow, then stop, because the ultimate testament to a man's strength isn't that he passes her tests, it's that he transcends them, standing steady like the oaks that weathered 1,000 storms before him. There's a dangerous myth lurking in the shadows of every relationship, the idea that if you just say the right thing or act the right way, you can finally stop walking on eggshells. But here's the truth, no one tells you you'll never pass every test, not because you're failing, but because perfection in love is as real as a unicorn in a subway station. Stoicism doesn't promise you'll never misstep, it teaches you to stop punishing yourself for being human. This is the power of Stoic realism. the art of embracing progress over perfection, knowing that even the wisest among us fumble sometimes. Think about Marcus Aurelius, the philosopher king who ruled an empire yet still scribbled in his journal about his own shortcomings. "You're not perfect," he'd remind himself. "But you can always strive to be better than yesterday." Apply that to her tests. Maybe you bit back when she needled you about your career, or you caved to guilt when she gave you the silent treatment. The old you might spiral into self-flagellation. "I blew it again." The Stoic you acknowledge the misstep, extract the lesson, then here's the critical part: you move forward. Not with shame, but with the calm understanding that growth is a spiral staircase, not an elevator. Here's where most men get stuck. They treat every test like a final exam, when really they're pop quizzes. Say she throws a curveball. "You're so selfish with your time." The perfectionist panics, scrambling to overcorrect. "I'll cancel all my plans." The Stoic realist. He might reflect, "Did I neglect her? If so, I'll adjust. If not, I'll hold my ground kindly." No drama, no defeat. Just a man who knows that sometimes the test isn't about passing or failing. It's about showing up authentically, even when it's messy. Epictetus, who trained students in Stoic resilience, framed it bluntly. "First say to yourself what you would be, then do what you have to do." Notice the sequence. You aspire to patience, then practice it, not flawlessly but persistently. When she tests you with a jealous jab and you snap instead of staying calm. That's data, not damnation. The next time you'll pause a second longer. The time after that, you might surprise yourself with a level-headed response. Progress, not perfection, but here's the paradox. The more you release the pressure to be perfect, the more effortlessly you'll navigate her tests. Why? Because perfectionism is a tell. It screams, "Your opinion defines me," and nothing fuels testing like the scent of that neediness. Seneca saw this in Rome's elite, writing, "The man who fears ruin has already ruined himself." In relationships, the fear of failing her test often guarantees you will. But when you embrace Stoic realism, when you accept that missteps are part of the curriculum, you radiate something disarming, the quiet confidence of a man who knows he's growing. So the next time you fail her test, try this reframe. What did this reveal about my growth edges? Maybe your defensiveness points to unhealed insecurities. Maybe your people-pleasing reveals blurred boundaries. These aren't failures, they're waypoints, and waypoints don't shame travelers, they guide them. Because here's the secret the Stoics knew. A man who owns his imperfections stops fearing them. And when she sees that her tests can't rattle your self-worth, because you've already made peace with being a work in progress, something shifts. The stakes drop, the games lose their grip, and what's left isn't perfect harmony, but something better, real connection, built not on flawless performance, but on two humans daring to grow together. Every ship needs a compass, not just to navigate storms, but to remember why it set sail in the first place. That's the power of telos, the Stoic concept of purpose. When her tests start feeling like hurricanes, the silent treatments, the probing questions, the emotional landmines, your telos becomes the North Star that keeps you steady. It's not about ignoring the chaos, but about holding something so meaningful in your heart that the chaos can't consume you. Here's how this works in practice. Imagine she's been distant all week, canceling plans, giving one-word answers, classic mixed signals. The untrained mind spirals. Is she losing interest? Is this a test? What did I do wrong? But the Stoic asks a different question. Why am I here? Not in the existential sense, but in the relationship. Is it because you crave her validation, because you're afraid of being alone? Or is it because you see partnership as a shared journey toward growth, where even the rough patches serve a purpose? Your answer determines whether her tests feel like earthquakes or speed bumps. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "When you wake up in the morning, tell yourself, the people I deal with today will be meddling, ungrateful, arrogant, dishonest, jealous, and surly." But he didn't stop there. He followed it with, I cannot be harmed by any of them because I wouldn't let myself feel anger or hatred towards someone who shares my divine nature. That's telos in action. He anchored himself in a greater purpose, serving humanity with virtue, so petty slights couldn't derail him. Apply that to your relationship. If your purpose is to build a life of mutual respect and growth, her silent treatment isn't a referendum on your worth, it's just weather. Let's break this down with a real-world scenario. Say she tests you by flirting with someone at a party to gauge your reaction. The insecure response, jealousy, anger, or worse, begging for reassurance. But the man, grounded in telos, pauses. He remembers why he's with her, not to control her, but to share a journey where both become their best selves. So he might chuckle and say, enjoying the attention, not with passive aggression, but with the calm of someone who knows his purpose isn't threatened by a fleeting moment. Epictetus taught that every circumstance is an opportunity to practice virtue. Your relationship's purpose isn't to avoid conflict, but to navigate it with integrity. When she needles you about your career choices, you don't defend or deflect, you return to your why. Is this partnership helping us both grow? If yes, her comment is just noise. If no, that's a deeper conversation. Either way, you're not tossed by every wave, but here's the catch: telos isn't static. It's not a one-time declaration you scribble in a journal and forget. It's a daily recalibration. Seneca compared life to a voyage where even the best sailors must constantly adjust their sails. Maybe your telos started as infatuation, then evolved into building a family, then shifted again into companionship through life's battles. When her tests shake you, it's often a sign to revisit your compass, not to judge her, but to realign with your shared or diverging purpose. Try this exercise. Write down your relationship's telos in one sentence. Not what you do together, but why you choose to. Keep it where you'll see it daily: your phone lock screen, your bathroom mirror. Then, the next time she throws a test, ask, does this threaten my purpose or just my pride? The answer will tell you whether to stand firm, adapt, or walk away. Because here's the truth the Stoics knew: a man who knows his why can endure almost anyhow. Her tests don't disappear, they just stop feeling like tests. They become part of the path, not the destination. And when she senses that unshakable clarity, that you're here not out of need but purpose, something shifts. The games lose their grip, the storms still come, but you're no longer lost in them. You're sailing. Think about the last time she gave you the cold shoulder, that silence so thick you could choke on it. Your first instinct was probably to scramble, to text, to fix it. But what if you could train yourself to sit in that discomfort, not just endure it, but embrace it? That's the power of voluntary discomfort, a Stoic practice that turns life's little irritations, her mood swings, her passive aggression into gym equipment for your resilience. The idea isn't to punish yourself, but to condition your mind like a Spartan training for battle, by willingly stepping into the cold, the hunger, the inconvenience, so that when life or love throws them at you, they don't knock you off balance. Start small, take cold showers, not the turn it to cool at the end kind, but full-on, gasp-inducing icy blasts from the first second. Why? Because that initial shock mirrors the jolt you feel when she snaps at you for no reason. Your body screams escape, just like your mind does when she tests you. But here's the Stoic secret: when you learn to stand under that freezing water, breathing steady, refusing to flinch, you're rewiring your reflexes. The next time she rolls her eyes at your joke or forgets to text back, that same calm kicks in. You felt worse, survived colder, and suddenly her minor provocations feel like lukewarm drizzle. Marcus Aurelius, who slept on the hard ground as emperor despite having a palace, wrote, "Very little is needed to make a happy life." He wasn't advocating suffering for its own sake. He was building antifragility, the ability to thrive under pressure. Apply that to your relationship. Skip dinner once a week, walk instead of driving, wear a slightly uncomfortable shirt all day. These aren't masochistic exercises, they're microdoses of hardship that inoculate you against the virus of overreaction. When she cancels plans last minute, you won't spiral. You'll think, "I've been hungrier than this," and pivot to a solo activity with the same focus you'd bring to a cold shower, intentional, unshaken. Epictetus took this further. Born a slave, he taught that difficulty shows what men are, not to break them, but to reveal their strength. Try this. Next time she's distant, don't fill the silence. Let the discomfort stretch. Notice the itch to apologize for things you didn't do, to bargain for her attention. Then, like holding your hand in ice water a few seconds longer, sit with it. That space between discomfort and reaction, that's where your power grows, because her tests don't hurt you. Your resistance to them does. Here's the beautiful paradox. The more you seek out small discomforts, the less she can weaponize them. When she withholds affection to see if you'll beg, you won't, because you've already spent a week without your favorite foods to prove you don't need external comforts. When she tries to guilt trip you into canceling guys' night, you'll smile, because you've trained to enjoy solitude on long walks with no phone. Like a boxer who spars daily so real fights feel slow, you'll recognize her provocations for what they are: light taps, not knockout punches. Seneca, who voluntarily lived on bread and water despite his wealth, put it bluntly: set aside certain days to go without luxuries to train against want. Your relationship's luxuries, her approval, her attention, her moods, are no different. By occasionally going without them by choice, you ensure you'll never need them to stay steady. Because that's the ultimate goal, not to stop her from testing, but to become a man so resilient, her tests don't even register as tests anymore. Just background noise, like the shiver of cold water you've long since learned to love. There's a moment in every argument where emotion threatens to hijack the narrative, when she says something sharp, and your mind instantly spins it into a grand story about her intentions, your worth, or the relationship's demise. This is where Stoic objectivity becomes your anchor, the ability to observe her tests as pure facts, stripping away the emotional fanfiction we so often drape over them. Imagine her giving you the silent treatment after a minor disagreement. The untrained mind races. She's punishing me. She doesn't care. This relationship is doomed. But Stoicism asks a radical question. What if you just saw it as: she's quiet today, nothing more, nothing less? Mastering this starts with language. Notice the difference between "she's giving me the cold shoulder to manipulate me" and "she's speaking less than usual." The first is a judgment, a story you've authored about her motives. The second, a meteorologist's report, just the weather, no forecast. Marcus Aurelius practiced this daily, jotting in his journal: see things as they are without adding the ought or should. When she cancels plans abruptly, the Stoic doesn't leap to "she's flaky" or "I must have done something wrong." He notes she cancelled, full stop. This isn't suppression of emotion. It's the precision of a surgeon removing inflamed assumptions to reveal clean facts. Here's why this works. Judgments are mirrors. They reveal more about your insecurities than her actions. Say she tests you with a loaded "you're always so busy." If you hear "she's controlling" or "she's needy," that's your narrative, not hers, the objective observation. "She commented on my schedule." Now you're free to respond from clarity, not projection. Epictetus, who trained students to separate events from interpretations, put it bluntly: it's not things that disturb us, but our opinions about them. Her silence isn't inherently painful, it's the meaning you attach: rejection, punishment that stings. Practical tip: become a courtroom stenographer in your relationship. When she acts in ways that trigger you, jot down the facts only in your notes app. July 3rd, she declined my invitation to dinner, gave no explanation. No adjectives, no backstory, just the evidence. Later, review these entries. Patterns will emerge, not just in her behavior, but in the stories you habitually layer over it. You'll notice how often your judgments: she's distant because she's losing interest, are pure speculation, not truth, but objectivity isn't cold detachment. It's the foundation for healthier connection. When you stop reacting to your own mental fanfiction, you create space to actually see her. Maybe her cold shoulder isn't a test at all. Maybe she's exhausted from work or wrestling with something unrelated to you. Seneca wrote, "We suffer more often in imagination than in reality." By observing without judging, you pierce through the illusion of conflict to what's real. The real test isn't her behavior, it's your ability to witness it without writing the climax. So the next time tension rises, pause, state the facts aloud, sterile as a lab report. She raised her voice. She hasn't texted in 8 hours. Feel the power in that simplicity. The moment you stop narrating her motives, you reclaim authorship of your reactions. And ironically, when she senses you're no longer a reactor to her scripts, the performances lose their audience. Imagine standing at the edge of an ancient Roman cliff, the wind whipping against your face as you peer down at the crashing waves below. Now picture your girlfriend's latest test. Maybe it was her sighing dramatically when you chose to work late, or that time she forgot to invite you to her friend's party to see how you'd react. From this vantage point, how much does any of it truly matter? That's the power of memento mori, the Stoic practice of reflecting on mortality, not as morbid fixation, but as the ultimate lens for cutting through life's petty dramas. The Stoics didn't dwell on death to depress themselves, they did it to awaken themselves. Marcus Aurelius wrote in his private journal, "You could leave life right now." Let that determine what you do and say and think. That might sound intense, but applied to relationships, it's transformative. When she tests you with silence or passive aggression, zoom out. Will this matter on my deathbed? Chances are you won't reminisce about the time you won an argument by out-sulking her, but you will remember whether you lived with dignity, whether you chose peace over pettiness, whether you loved deeply without being derailed by temporary storms. Let's make this practical. Say she throws one of those classic jealousy tests mentioning an ex, just to see how you'll react, the instinctive response. Tightness in your chest, heat rising as you fire back with questions or thinly veiled insecurity. But memento mori flips the script. Before reacting, you pause. You picture yourself decades from now, frail and gray, reflecting on this very moment. What would that future version of you, the one who knows time is precious, advise? Probably something like, don't waste breath on games. Either address this with honesty or let it go, but don't play. Epictetus took this further, reminding his students, keep death and exile before your eyes every day along with everything that seems terrible, because then you'll never have a base thought nor cling to excess. In relationships, exile might be losing her a prospect that terrifies men into people-pleasing. But when you confront that fear head-on, what if she leaves? Could I endure it? Her tests lose their fangs. Suddenly, her silent treatment isn't a punishment. It's a neutral event you're free to engage with or ignore, like a bird singing outside your window. This isn't about becoming indifferent to love. It's about loving fully without clinging desperately. Seneca wrote letters to his wife from exile, pouring out affection while acknowledging, no one can lose what they've already let go of. That's the paradox memento mori reveals. The more you accept impermanence, the more present you become. When she criticizes your outfit or nitpicks your habits, you'll catch yourself smiling, not because it doesn't sting, but because you're too alive to be diminished by such smallness. So tonight, try this before bed. Lie still and imagine your last moments, not to scare yourself, but to clarify. What kind of partner do you want to remember being? One who rose above petty tests with grace, or one who handed over his peace at every provocation? Then, the next time she rolls her eyes or drops a loaded comment, you'll feel it. Not the old panic, but something quieter, steadier. The whisper of a man who knows life's too short for anything but truth. And ironically, that's when her tests will stop feeling like tests at all, just passing clouds in the vast sky of a life well lived. We've walked through 25 Stoic strategies, from mastering the pause to reframing tests as training, from the discipline of silence to the liberation of memento mori. But here's the secret: their real power isn't in any single tactic. It's in their cumulative effect, like stacking armor one piece at a time until you're no longer vulnerable to the arrows of her moods or the traps of emotional reactivity. Think of it like building a ship. A single plank won't keep you afloat in a storm, but layer enough with precision, and suddenly you're navigating waves that would have capsized the old you. These strategies aren't about changing her, they're about rewiring you. When you practice viewing her tests through the lens of sympatheia, you stop taking them personally. When you anchor in telos, you stop mistaking storms for shipwrecks. And when you embrace voluntary discomfort, you stop fearing the very tensions that once threw you off balance. Each principle interlocks like gears in a clock, turning chaos into order, reaction into response. Marcus Aurelius didn't conquer Rome's chaos with one mantra. He returned daily to his journal, refining his mindset brick by brick. That's the invitation here: consistency over quick fixes. So where do you start? Don't overwhelm yourself trying to master all 25 at once. Pick one this week, just one, and observe the ripple effect. Maybe it's the pause. The next time she needles you, take 12 seconds to breathe before responding. Notice how that gap changes the dynamic. Or try negative visualization. Spend 5 minutes each morning imagining life without her, not to dwell in fear, but to appreciate what you have while loosening your grip on needing it. Watch how that shifts your interactions from clingy to confident. The goal isn't perfection, it's progress. Epictetus fell, Seneca stumbled, even Marcus had days he forgot his own wisdom. What made them stoic wasn't flawless execution, it was the relentless return to principle. Your relationship will still have tests, but with each strategy you integrate, they'll feel less like ambushes and more like familiar terrain you've trained to cross. So here's your challenge: choose one technique today, apply it, observe, then come back and choose another. Stack them slowly, steadily, because the man who masters these tools doesn't just pass her tests, he outgrows them. And that's when something magical happens. The tests stop coming, not because she's changed, but because you've become untouchable. Now go, your first rep starts now.